another debate. And last night, the big focus was on Rebecca Dallet's desperate attempt to say, look, everybody, I can be liberal and crazy just like Tim Burns. I'm just as liberal. I'm just as crazy as Tim Burns. She's running an ad directly taking aim at Donald Trump. She is trying to tell every liberal in the state of Wisconsin exactly where she will stand, exactly what type of judge she will be. Now, what have we seen in the presidency of Donald Trump? We have seen nonstop federal judges taking it upon themselves, ignoring the plenary powers granted to the president in the Constitution on the issue of immigration and say, no. We believe that what the president is doing is fundamentally wrong, so we will stop it. Never mind that there is absolutely no legal or constitutional basis for blocking the president's so-called travel ban. It's been held up in courts for more than a year now. Why? Because liberals have been legislating from the bench. Tim Burns, at least, makes no bones about the fact that he will substitute his own judgment, such as it is, for the Constitution of both the United States and the state of Wisconsin, and the laws of both the nation and the state. We do not yet have audio from last night's debate, but courtesy of our friends at the McIver Institute, we have Tim Burns, in his own words, telling the state of Wisconsin why he is patently unfit for any judgeship ever.
I'm Tim Burns, and on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, I will be an unshakable champion of liberal, democratic, and progressive values.
That statement right there is disqualifying. That was in his opening remarks. That is fundamentally disqualifying. I will be a champion of liberal, democratic, and progressive values. On any case involving the Republican Party or any organization that identifies itself as conservative, Tim Burns has already said how he will rule. It doesn't matter what the facts of the case are. It doesn't matter what the relevant law is. By virtue of the party that would be hypothetically before him, Tim Burns has already said how biased he is. Tim Burns has already said just how he would rule. And oh, by the way, why exactly is Rebecca Dallet trying to out Tim Burns crazy, the crazy Tim Burns? It's because Tim Burns in that debate said this.
You have weakened our democracy.
He's saying this, by the way, about the Federalist Society, which hosted this debate. He's talking to them.
To the point that we elected a perverse show dog named Trump to lead our great nation. You now help that demagogue pack our federal courts, and you sit silently by as he destroys our moral standing in the world.
Yes, Trump is a show dog. So let me explain what's happening. Rebecca Dallet is a Milwaukee County Circuit Court judge who at least has some semblance of sanity and has some semblance of decorum, or at least she did, until she realized that she was battling for the liberal vote with somebody who has no sense of decorum, has no sense of what a judge should and should not say, and what a judge should and should not do with respect to telegraphing exactly how he would rule. Therefore, Rebecca Dallet had to put out this anti-Trump TV commercial in an effort to show her voter base exactly the type of judge that she would be. In other words, Burns and Dallet are attempting to out-liberal each other, and you've got one sane, rational human being named Michael Screnock who says, hey, wait a minute, guys, we're just supposed to apply the law and the Constitution to the facts of a case. Like, our job is to review laws to make sure they comport with the Constitution of Wisconsin and the Constitution of the United States. You guys do, realize that, right? Wrong! Tim Burns wants you to know exactly who he is.
What's your belief on how judges should read and interpret law?
Well, let me start here. I am a big D Democrat and a small d Democrat. I believe in democracy.
I've got another big D word that would apply to him, but I can't say it on the radio. He's trying to say, and the point that he was making was, I am for democracy. What he was really doing is telegraphing exactly to his audience who he would be. And that is a Democrat, not someone who believes in democracy, but who believes in democracy as envisioned by Tim Burns. In fact, when he answers specifically about legislating from the bench, he says,
in terms of imposing my own political values, this is identical to the arguments we have heard for 50 or 60 years coming out of conservative politicians about judges. The legislation from the bench argument, the imposing your own political values. Well, let's be honest about this. Any time a judge expands rights in this country to protect the less fortunate or people with less political power, that argument has been made.
And what he says is that Brown v. Board of Education, for example, is expanding rights, and therefore it was a judge legislating from the bench. No, idiot. That was applying the 14th Amendment. I'm telling you, this guy has no fundamental concept of judicial review. He has no earthly idea what the proper role of a judge. It's absolutely astounding to watch him talk. And in case you didn't get what he was saying in that 44-second exchange, he makes it very clear for you.
Let me tell you something. If expanding rights is legislating from the bench, count me in.
Count me in. I'm going to expand rights, but remember, only for those less fortunate, only for those who I myself deem society has left behind. You see, this is the fundamental issue with Tim Burns, is that he doesn't rely on the facts of a case. He doesn't rely on the law or the Constitution. He relies on the socioeconomic or demographic status of those before him, and he admits it. This is a fundamentally dangerous idea to have anywhere near a court. Justice is supposed to be blind. Justice is not supposed to be Tim Burns looking at the skin color of one of the parties before him and saying, you know what? You've got a skin color I like. I'm going to root for you, and I'm going to rule for you because I believe that you are disadvantaged by society. In his closing remarks, he makes this abundantly clear.
Everybody wants and deserves opportunity for themselves and their children. And ultimately, that's why I'm running for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Because in the span of my adulthood, equal opportunity for the children of people who struggle has disappeared. I'm Tim Burns. I would appreciate your support in my election for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Thank you for your courtesy tonight.
Okay, yes, thank you. Equal opportunity has disappeared. I don't even know where to begin with that. So wait a second. Like 20 minutes earlier, he had referenced Brown v. Board of Education. Minority children weren't allowed to go to the same schools. But you're trying to say now things are worse. Now that opportunity has disappeared. First of all, anyone who actually believes that sort of nonsense, that over the course of 30 to 50, he had just gotten done talking about Obergefell, the Supreme Court decision legalizing gay marriage. Gay marriage was not legal in the United States until very recently, yet somehow equal rights have disappeared. Huh? Anybody who believes this is either lying to themselves or an idiot. When a judge says this, or somebody who wants to be a judge says this, you have to be very concerned. Why? because he sees it as his mission, as his sole objective, not to apply the law and the Constitution to a set of facts before him, but to right injustices, to right wrongs as he sees them. That's what conservatives mean by legislating from the bench. It has nothing to do with expanding rights. It's expanding a sense of self on behalf of a judge. It's expanding the self-importance of somebody whose job it is to interpret the laws and the Constitution, but rather sees his job and does his job as being almost like a king, saying, thou shalt now do this. Thou canst now do that. That is fundamentally opposed to what the entire concept of judicial review set up in Marbury versus Madison is designed to do. The court is a check on the other two branches of government to make sure those branches do not violate individual rights. The court is not there to expand rights. The court is not there to grant rights. And most importantly, the court is not there to determine who does and who does not have the sort of rights that the judge sitting in the court thinks they should. This election is 2 weeks from today. You've got someone like Tim Burns who wants a 10-year term, and you've got someone like Rebecca Dallet who wants to be just like Tim Burns. Ladies and gentlemen, there is one sane human being in this race, and his name is Michael Screnock. I don't tell people how to vote.
I believe strongly in the rule of law, and I believe that the role of the court is to interpret and to apply the law, but not to rewrite the law or to try to legislate from the bench. I think that's fundamental to our system of government, and I think it's critical that the justices on our Supreme Court understand the limited role that they've been given by the people through our Constitution.
Candidate Tim Burns says that the notion that judges are apolitical is a, quote, fairy tale. What do you think?
I think that he believes that passionately. I think he really does believe that. I think he's wrong. And I can say that because I deal with it every day. Every day when I sit on the bench, I approach cases based on the facts as they come to me and the law as I find it. And it's not unusual for me to have a case in front of me that I have a personal feeling about or an emotional attachment about one way or the other. And I must set aside those feelings, personal opinions and emotions, and not let them get in the way of my role as a judge in applying the law to the facts.